Associate Director and Se- uh, Director and Senior Systems Engineering Manager at Virtusa. With his vast experience in cloud solutions and system engineering, we couldn't have asked for a better mentor to kick off this series, right? So, without further delay, let's begin. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mr. Indiga Vimalasuriya. So, over to you, Mr. Indiga.
Thank you. So thanks everyone. Thanks for taking this time. So there are two objectives, the entire program, right? So what we want is we want you to provide you some insight into how software development works in industry level. So in at industry, what sort of technologies people are using, and how while you are at university, while you are learning, right? You are the computer science and the other important things. How can you uh, have a little bit of touch of how what's happening in industry, and maybe use those what industry is doing, part of a second year projects, the third year project, the final year project, or what you do, so that by the time you are getting into the industry, you have some good experience of using the tools, using the softwares, using different probably the libraries and other things to build real world things, right? So even so the entire training sessions, so we had good connect with Laksita and the team, so there was kind of discussion about uh, what was the feedback, what when we did this session last time. And with that we kind of trying to fine tune, right? And see how we can ensure that this really give more benefits to you, right? So that's the whole objective. And one other important things to kind of I mean flag it early is, so we don't want this to be a DevOps session, right? I know at this moment I'm more into site reliability engineering or observability, or we do a lot of artificial intelligence for IT operations. But the objective of this session is and this series, these workshops, and whatever we're going to do next 13 weeks is, we want to make you good developers, right? And the word developer means different things, but if I even repeat it again with a different word, we want you to make a good builder, right? So whole objective is you learn some stuff and that enable you to build things, right? Build things which real world people can use it. And I mean, end of the day, obviously what everyone wants is build things which end users can use it, and that you can give a great customer experience to whoever is going to use it, right? So and you can't do that right away, right? Maybe you'll have to do a little bit of POCs, right? Like we say proof of concept, your second year project, third year project, and multiple other projects. And that way, you learn and kind of you learn it in a small scale. And then by the time you are at industry or you are working for a customer, you will be able to scale it, right? So our main objective is to make sure that you become good builders, right? And you are able to develop things, and that will really help you in the long run. And you might feel some of these things are maybe DevOps, right? Because what you have to understand is that entire software development life cycle is connected, right? There's nothing someone who does full-time coding and then just forget about the other thing, right? So it's mostly the clients comes in, they give the requirement, and then some people who there are business analysts who will kind of get this requirement and align it to a more of a. So let me share my screen real quickly, right? Before I go into the next things. I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. So typically, the software development life cycle is something like this, right? You kind of so we do the design, and then we do the development, and then we have to deploy it someplace, right? And then it has to be maintained as well, right? So and then you have the testing part, and so there are a lot of things, right? So development is just one piece. So there are a lot of other things involved in, like, ensuring that we deliver final product to the end users so that they can use it. But whole idea is that it's about building, right? The satisfaction comes, like, you involve, you build something, you test something, you deploy something, and when that is being used by your end users, right? And that makes money, right? Like, end of the day, what you have to understand is that we do all of these things to our customers can make money, right? So I mean, this system has to ensure that, like, either we uh, able to kind of like get more money, or, like, reduce money, right? Like, maybe you have a lot of expenses, you do things in manually, so you kind of like automate it, like build a system so that this can reduce their operation cost, right? So all about is it's about building things. How come you can Sorry, a question. Okay. Yeah. So whole and when we are doing building, like, we use different methods, like, initially, like, long time back we used to have waterfall method, like, so it's all kind of like very big bang, right? We get the entire requirement and then we convert it, and we do the development, and then we test it, and we give everything to the customer, right? And sometimes, like, customer just ask for like, some small, maybe just a tire, right? But maybe we'll build a four-wheel car, right? Because there can be, like, misunderstanding how we are interpreted things. So customer always see some products at the last stage, right? So there are a lot of like back and forth, right? So there's a lot of issues. We were not able to deliver what customers want, so we kind of move into the agile way, which is about we build this entire requirement into a small subset, right? Like, so example, if it is like a big thing, we split into 10 parts, 10 deliveries. So we deliver the first thing, and then we show it to customer, and then we ask them, are you like it, and we refine it, go back. So it's most like a 2 weeks sprints we are running. So within a 2 week we will convert a requirement into a code, and then test it and deploy it, show it to the customer in a separate environment, and if everything is good, we will deploy in production, right? So every 2 weeks we are doing delivering things. So by the time, like, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, we will have the working project, we will have everything, and customer knows exactly what they are getting at it, right? And when we do this, like, what you have to understand is that we had to use lot of tools, right? So in your planning stage we use a lot of tools, right? And when we are kind of like, development, obviously, right? Like, these days development we use IDs are integrated with AI. Maybe you are using ChatGPT, like, you use a lot of other stuff. So it's all about how you get your requirement, how you quickly convert it to stories, right, in the agile world. So that, like, that is kind of like how we track requirements, and then those requirements will be kind of like the stories will be split into our sprints, which I told you about, like, 2 weeks sprints, and then we develop. And then once we develop, obviously we are using a lot of technologies, so we have to build it, and then we'll have to integrate with multiple other systems, and the software packages, those things, and then we'll have to obviously deploy, right? So whatever you do, you can't just have it in your personal laptop, it has to be running in somewhere, right? Because end users has to access this, and they are not going to access your laptop, so they has to have a place ability to access something. So you will have to deploy it to place, right? So we'll discuss about deploying, and then it has to have this operational layer as well, right? So whole idea of what we call DevOps is, I mean, DevOps is a philosophy, right? Like, it's go beyond the tool. It's a culture. It's a lot of things, like, you don't want to hear, right? I mean, if you really want to get into the DevOps and the philosophy, like, you can kind of probably search it. You can probably we'll probably give you a couple of links as well. But idea is that it's a vast philosophy, right? And maybe at your stage, maybe you don't really want to hear about the theory, or you just don't want to understand, like, why some we are doing some part. But if I summarize it, it's about automation, right? It's about bringing in a lot of tools so that you can do this much faster, right? So whole idea of DevOps or the other SRE or any other thing is so that we can develop something much faster, get it in front of our customer much faster, right? And how we can do that is the real value, right? Because end of the day, if you look at it, like, industry is very competitive, right? I mean, even our customers, there's a lot of competition, right? If you don't do it, someone else will do that, right? So whole idea is that how quickly we can develop things and bring it in front of our customer, right? So for that, we are going to use a lot of tools, and sometimes learning about these tools, you might think, okay, yeah, this is about DevOps, right? So, okay, we are saying we are building, but we are going to use some DevOps tool, right? But what you have to understand is that you can't be a builder without using these tools, right? End of the day, you might have to use some of these tools to enable you to develop and deploy, right? And whether you like it or not, that's the life, right? And if you have seen, we have done this session like about a couple of months back or the week backs about industry awareness. So if you have watched it, like, we put a lot of effort to say that AI is being used everywhere, right? And what that has done is, right, so even the developer, right, who is doing development, they are not just focused on one small area. Predominantly, like, they are full stack, right? So about your backend, right? Your backend databases, on top of that your data layer, and your business logic, your front end, and pretty much like we are to deploy this as well, right? So the modern developer, right, if I call you the developers who's at year 2025, they kind of knows everything, right? They are able to code, and they are able to use these services, right, cloud, and then they are able to deploy it as well, and they are able to operate. And we are pretty much trying to build systems where these systems fail less, so that the operational overhead is less, right? So because if you ask me, like, why we have this operations part, right, ops part, because the software we are delivering is not at good quality, right? So if we deliver the, I mean, it's autonomous, AI is there, but the problem is that, can we guarantee this quality, right? Uh, so operation is solving a software problem, right? So whole ideas of the industries, instead of letting ops to sort out a software problem, let's make sure that, our software is in good quality, right? And it serve the purpose, so that, like, we don't have to spend so much money on the operations part, so that we can fully kind of, like, up to certain level, we can fully automate this entire setup. So that's high levelly what we're going to, I mean, that's high level, like, what's happening and what we're going to discuss next, like, 10 week once, you to develop a lot of stuff, so that like, you get some hands-on experience, so we will try to guide you. So we are expecting that, you put some effort from your side to learn some of these things, and learn some of these, deploy some of these POCs. And then finally, what we are hoping is that, like last time, maybe visit you, we'll have a hackathon and a bit more interaction, and so you kind of like bring everything you learn during this several weeks to action, and then you can kind of like develop something, and maybe we'll see how it is going, right? So before we any going any further, any questions, anyone? Okay. So one thing, like, we want you to do this time is, we want kind of like little more interactions, right? So like, maybe we'll ask you a couple of questions, right? Just to ensure that, at least you are there, and maybe. So if I ask you, right, so what are your objectives of this session, right? Like, this series, right? So what do you want? Anyone want to volunteer? So Tarak, I see you there, you are here, Tarak. See Tarak, Dasun, quite a lot of people. So, Malindu, Bhatia, Malinda, right? So, what do you want, right? Like any idea, so what is your expectation here?
Excuse me. So, Nischint, get an idea of how to develop a program and to develop a to give a solution to a problem by coding.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much. Right. So that's exactly what we are also trying to do. Right. Like so we kind of like want you to get an understanding of how you can develop stuff. Right. And convert an idea into a solution. Right. And idea into provide some value. So thanks, Devan. Right. I appreciate kind of taking the the first cut at giving some talking points. Anyone else what else you want to do? Anyone else so we want at least one person to talk and just give any feedback before we can move into the next the area which we're going to cover today. Someone want to volunteer? Okay, so there's this to get more knowledge about developing. Okay, that's great. Yeah. So Tarak is in, I think most of us knows how to code, but don't know how to deliver, right? Okay. Okay. So one other thing, we want to do, uh, yeah. Okay, sure. So no problem. So one thing, we want you to do this time is that, involve, right? Talk, right? It doesn't matter, right? Maybe, maybe you can just type it in a chat, or maybe I have been in your situation, right? I was a student and I in the same faculty, I went through the same people, right? So even when I was there, like Professor Salukas sir was there, right? So so I am here because like a lot of good things Professor Salukas did, right? So I know, right? Maybe we don't like to talk, right? Maybe the English is problem, right? And like even now, right? I don't think my English is good, right? But I don't care, right? As long as someone understand, maybe I'll repeat it again, and so language is not a problem, right? And if you think that maybe language is a problem, probably I think all of you can talk good English, maybe better than us as well, but don't make it a barrier, right? I mean, what you have to understand is that, I mean, maybe if take this opportunity, right? This is a trial, right? You can speak, maybe you will make mistakes, people will laugh at you, but who cares, right? Maybe when you are in front of a someone doing an interview for a company, maybe this experience will help you, right? So think that everything you do, it's some sort of a experience, right? And so engagement is good, and even if, right, if you think you want to ask something in Sinhala, that's totally fine, right? It's so we will use the English medium because whatever we do, we use the English. I mean, it's in English, right? But it doesn't mean like we can still talk about in Sinhala. If you have anything, you can ask, right? So whole idea is that this is for you, and you should ask, right? I mean, you should demand, right? You should get clarified, right? I mean. Uh, Maybe from a personal perspective, I might think like, so we have like, at least I have around 5 6 people who's volunteering to come and do this from Virtusa. And they are also spending time, right? They will spend at least 1 hour, 1.5 hour, and little bit of prep to come and do these sessions. So I mean, so we have to respect their time as well. But more than that, like, we also want to respect your time, right? Like, we get at least like 30 odd people, and we want to ensure that we respect your time, right? Like, we give value to you. So but that has to be give and take, right? You will also have to ask questions, push us, and demand us. And if you have any feedback, go to Lakshita, right, and tell that maybe we want to do something differently, like we want to do in a different way, or maybe we want to anything, right? So just feedback. So that's good, because unless we do that, we will not be able to get the value out of this, right? So one of the feedback, at least I got from all of you is, you don't want to see a lot of theory, right? And uh, maybe there are sometimes where I agree with that. Maybe I also don't like to see a lot of theory, but I'm a firm believer, right? If you ask me, I'm a firm believer getting to know why part, right? So when at maybe at your age, I just don't care about why. Maybe I just want to get to know technology, right? I get to know the technology, I write code, how to do this, do an integration, use something. But at least now, uh, I think, like, anyone can do that, right? I mean, with AI, but the idea is that you should know why you are doing it, right? Like, even if it is DevOps, it's very easy for me to say DevOps is just a set of tools, right? And maybe, I'll stop from there. But as I said, like, it's a philosophy, it's a culture, and software development itself is uh, when I was at your age, I was going through there. We had this software engineering course, right? It's about software engineering, and it talk about, like, how software engineering happened, software development happened, and it was so boring, right? Not just, the person who did was excellent, but ideas that we were like, and we are saying, like, who's going to use it, right? And why should we care, right? And okay, we want to do development, right? It's all, I remember, like, at that time it's all Java, so J2EE, and EJBs, and we have the web services, right? So we are thinking, like, okay, yeah, we don't want to learn this, like, we want to code, and it's all about code. But it's good, right? But it's also, I now believe, like, firmly, you should know why you are doing something, right? Because if you know why, then most probably you will figure it out. But if you just going, so it's all about three part, like, why we are doing it, and like, what we're going to do, and then how, right? So what generally, how part is the least thing you can worry, right? Like, maybe you can still figure it out, and what you're going to do is something little above, but why, right? Uh, but I hear you, right? Like, even though we go and come and kind of, like, mention to you, saying, yeah, it's good, like, you learn why part, you spend time, and this is why we do. Probably you are not to have that patience, right? To go through that. And I understand, like, we also hear you. So what we think this time we're going to do differently is that, we're going to cut down the slides, the theory, and those why part to less, right? But we still think that, we'll spend some time to give you the why part, because we believe, like, getting to know why is the most important thing. But we'll try to figure out ways to kind of, like, get you learn, right? So, and one other quick way to, like, like, save your time, our time, all of, and give some good benefits to you is what we have done last time, right? So the computer society, they were very kind, right? Like, they kind of, like, recorded all the sessions. So almost all the 11 sessions are in this the YouTube channel, right? You can go and see DevOps Engineering series. So here you can see like the standard concepts and the tier wise architecture, AWS, all those things, all the sessions we have done, it's there, right? And some sessions about 1 hour, some sessions like within 45 minutes. So what I'm suggesting is that uh, you go through this, right? You start going from the session one, listen to it, and probably last time we spend more time going through why we are doing it, what is software engineering, what is ITIL, what is DevOps, how it's all coming together. So that part we have done like more than maybe we have supposed to do last time. So you go through that, and that will uh, help you to get some good idea, right? And maybe we might take some of these concepts again and come back to you, the things which we think important. But still we are recommending you go through this. That will save your time, and you will also able to get a good understanding. And we will go through what we're going to cover, right? This uh, like 12 weeks or 13 weeks. So what's good is that before you get into a future session, you figure out what was that in the future session, and try to read, go through, listen some of this session. And that way you have some prior understanding, and while listening, if it is interested to you, you continue, otherwise you discontinue, or you kind of crash it, and then we can just quickly get into the actual hands-on work, right? So that's the objective, right? Any questions, anyone? So we have a question like this like the AI part and kind of like little beyond. Maybe we'll come to that little later. Right? So what we'll do is so today we also want to get a quick overview of AWS, and let me just share my screen. So hope you're able to see this screen, right? So this is more of a very fast crash course on AWS, right? We're not going to spend too much time. And same thing, you can go and refer it in that YouTube channel we have done, right? So you'll be able to understand. So I'm pretty sure, maybe you now already understand cloud is everywhere, right? All the customers are using cloud, and I mean, we still have customers who use their own data centers, but that number is slowly coming down. So everyone is in cloud, right? So if I ask you the question, so what is cloud, right? So what is your understanding of cloud? Anyone, right? What do you think? What is cloud? Or can you write your answers, right? So what do you think cloud is?
It's like a shared database which can access by the people we can give to access.
Okay, so you said it's shared database, is it?
Yes,
Okay, so why you think it's a database?
because this data, like the data we retrieve from your clients are saved there, and also the
Okay,
data we process, and
okay.
mostly the data we are.
Okay, so let's take example, right? Like let's maybe uh, so just give me 1 second, right? Like one, yeah. Okay. So I hope you are still able to see the screen. So let's go to something like Amazon.com, right? So I'm sure you would go to Amazon.com, right? So Amazon.com is a place where you can buy things, right? So you can go and search things, and you can get into a shopping cart and all those things, right? So what you do, right? Like so if you look at it, right? Like how do you think Amazon.com is working? Okay, so it's like a virtual space, right? Not physical, right? Okay, but I mean, it's fine, right? Like it's virtual, but I mean, virtual. I mean, it can't be fully virtual, right? Like, I mean, it has to have still have a physical world, right? I mean, you think like, okay, yeah, it's virtual, but it's not virtual, right? Like it has to have a physical thing, right? So this virtual is built on top of something physical, right? Because end of the day, like I mean, you still have to have servers, you have like all your infrastructure, and there has to be something, right? Like because this has to be hosted in some physical place, right? Any idea? What do you think? So you will have to talk, right? Like I mean, I'll stay until I get couple of answers this time, right? Or maybe you just put to chat. So if chat is fasting, right? I'm looking at chat, right? It's just it doesn't matter, right? One thing you have to understand is there's no right or wrong answer, right? So I mean, it's always good to clarify what you think. Then at least, I mean, maybe you guys know everything, right? Like so maybe we can go super fast, right? Maybe we might want to slow down little, right? Maybe we might want to like maybe think this. So lot of our entire delivery will depend on like your feedback, right? And feedback is like more engagement, right? So I'll ask this question in a simple way, right? So if I come to you, right, as a customer, right, I come to you and say, let's say, let's take a one small example, right? So if I tell you that I want to build a car rental application, right? So I want to build a car rental application, right? So like, okay, can you tell me like, what are the components of this car rental application? We want to build a car rental application, right? So what do you want, right? Like, so what do you do? So help me out, right? Like, how do you do this, right? So I mean, some customer it can be a customer, it can be one of your assignment, right? So they like someone wants you to develop a car rental app, right? So how do you do this? Okay, so database, front end server, gather the requirement. Okay, so we gather the requirement, right? Like, so requirement is nothing but okay, I want to see the available cars for a particular location, and then the price, and then ability to reserve, right? So basically, yeah, so that's a good question, right? Like, so what are the requirement? We want to see, it's a car rental app. We want to see what we want to see, right? We want to see a list of cars available with details, right? So probably you want to see car model, price, all those things, right? And then you want to kind of like do a reservation, right? And also this must be kind of like based on the location, right? Right. I mean, I want to book a car from Colombo, Candy, Gold, right? Okay. So the requirement part is like probably a little clear, right? We have something. So uh, okay, so Malindu, right? Like Malin thinks, okay, gather the requirements. We have that. We know, right? Database front end server, right? Okay, so let's do that, right? What you are saying. So what is your favorite database these days? Okay, Postgres, right? We'll go with Postgres. So, what is the favorite? The sorry, the front end, like these days you are using like Angular, what is like React, mm, uh, like Next.js. React. Okay, so you're going to have front end, right? Okay, in Next as well. Okay, so what else, right? So, do you think like this is fine? Like, so what else? What else you need now? Right? So you have a database, we have a front end. Is this good enough to develop something? So what is front end, right? Front end is probably your the HTML, CSS, and just like the the visualize. So probably you need a back end, right? Like back end is your business logic. So we want to have a business logic, right? And so what is the technology you want to use for business logic, right? Anyone? So what do you want to use, right? Okay, Spring Boot, right? Let's say this is the customer, right? Like, so he is going to access our front end app, and we have a business logic. You want to deploy this in Spring Boot, right? So that is good. And so we have a database also figure out, right? Okay, so I think like Dasun says that we'll have to look at authentication. Absolutely, right? We have to look at the authentication as well. But we will come to that, right? Because I just at this time at this moment I want to make it little simple, right? Like because we don't want to make life also complicated, and also remember it's about agile, right? Like we just want to ensure we have something, and then maybe we'll build on that, right? Um, Okay, so this is good, right? What do you think? Like, are you good with this? At least put right good, right? Like, I'm okay, or put some comment, right? Are we good, guys? Like, so what do you think? Like, you are okay, or anything, right? Like, any other thing, right? Which we have missed. So, like, I don't feel like missing this authentication part, right? So maybe we'll write down the other requirements as well, right? Like, okay, authentication, right? So we'll come to this again, uh, but at least we have something, right? Okay, we need a medium to access for all customers, right? Yeah. So we'll put this in online, right? Like we can get everyone to access it. Uh, yeah. So that's a good question, right? Like so let's do one thing, right? Because if I were you, right, now I mean, um, I'll go with MySQL here, right? Because it's more easier for me, right? Like, I know why you want to go Postgres. Like, it can be there can be a lot of good reason, and maybe that's also nice, right? In your project, you use Postgres, but I think like this situation, MySQL is, I mean, it's fine, right? I'm not going to, so my idea is not to impress someone, right? So I just want to develop something. So maybe I'll go with MySQL. So I am more comfortable with Angular, right? So I'll go with the Angular front end, and Spring Boot is fine, right? So Spring Boot is, I can develop microservices, right? Um, so anyone, what is a microservice?
Distributing the business logic into separate components like services, different services.
Okay, so that's again a very good like a design principle, right? So let's assume this way, right? So we use, like, I mean, even like, you do this in the bad way, right? You still have your front end separately. You will have a database and you have a backend, and this is a 3D architecture, right? So what generally we used to have is, we used to create a big gigantic app, right? So it's a big gigantic code, big gigantic app. We developed a lot of stuff, so we brought everything into here. This particular the big the module, but the drawback is that, so if that goes down, everything is down, right? So that's one. Second one is that, I mean, in case, like, we have a bad code in one small place, that can have a major impact on all the places, right? So then, like, I mean, if you are using microservices, we might as well split it, right? So what I will do is, so now that you know this Spring Boot, I will write it down. So probably we want to have a car service, right? Because it's a cars, right? So like all the car related details, right? Car model, and all the mileage, the price, and all those things. So we I might use something like car service. And then what I'll do, right? Like, I also want to have something like location, because I want to map that, I mean, if you are looking at, right, from Peradeniya, can I rent a car? I want to ensure that Peradeniya, what are the cars mapped to that location, right? So location is probably important for me. Then I might go for reservation, right? Like, it's all about reservation. I'll go with the reservation service as well, right? So these are my services, right? So I'm still using microservices, Spring Boot, but what I have done is, like, I kind of doing this in such a way that, right, so these are different modules now, right? So I'm really using microservice architecture and design, right? So there are some, like, I mean, there are some people, right, who thinks like, okay, if you're building a microservices, maybe each service have a different database scheme, right? So that is the best way, because someone can argue, right? Yeah, you are smart, right? You split it, but if your database goes down, you are done, right? So yes, I understand. But at the moment, like, this is still serve me for purpose, right? So I kind of like have different model, and maybe I will ensure that, database has high availability, right? So that way that I can still tolerate this design. So the word I want to you to remember is high availability, right? We call it HA, right? Okay. So are we good? Any feedback? How is up to now? Any questions, guys? Are we good? Someone has to say, we are good, right? Like, I can move into the next one, right? So are we good, guys? So far? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now the question is, right? Let's assume that, somehow you figure out to develop this, right? Like, so you have a database, you put that everything, you use Spring Breeze, you put the front end and all those things. So what to do next, right? So, like, there was this like, someone said that, we need the medium to access, right? So how are we going to get our customers to access this, right? So that's again a big challenge, right? Like, because this is something like this, right? If I right, so how are we going to make our customers access this? So what are the approaches, right? Like, okay, I develop this in my laptop. Can I ask my customers to access from my laptop? No, right? Like, so I have to put this in some place, right? Maybe cloud, right? So how to put this into cloud? Anyone, right? Any idea? Any suggestions, right? Any suggestions? Any thoughts? Anything? Okay. So what you have to understand is that, so end of the day, this has to be hosted in a, okay, we have to host and we have to get a domain. Yeah. So yeah, probably you'll have to get a domain, and then you have to get a domain, right? Like so your car rental app or something, right? So you'll have to get a domain, and then you will have to host this in some place, right? So I'm using the exact word you guys are putting, but we are to host, right? So that place probably is cloud, right? So if so this is a classic example, right? So we park this, right? So we'll come back to this today. We'll come back to this, but let's go back to our the cloud, right? So yeah. So if you look at cloud, uh, so so we are focusing on AWS. But typically, any cloud provider is generally very similar, right? Like if you are in cloud, it's always a very similar stuff. So generally, what happens is that what we say cloud is that the provider has its own infrastructure, right? Like end of the day, they might have their servers and all those big data centers and all those things. So what they have done is that on top of these big data centers, they have created uh, like four important things, right? So one thing is compute, right? So when that in customers request that domain, right? Someone goes and say car rental app, and that domain hits, it has to come into a compute, right? Like it has to do some processing. So cloud is one place where it will give you the compute for the processing, right? And then next it's about storage, right? Because end of the day, your images, your like it can be your images, HTML files, and all those other things you have to host in some place, right? And maybe your database, right? Like data, right? So it has, I mean, any application, right? Any application you develop, it will have a storage place, right? So cloud will provide you storage, right? And then there's the networking part as well, right? Because end of the day, it's about the request coming in, right? Like maybe you will someone say it's about HTTP traffic, it's about HTTPS traffic, and how we access some of these things, how we secure, right? Some of these things, right? So the network plays big role, and then finally again database, right? So storage is like your standard storage, and probably database is your the database, right? Where you actually store your data from the transactional perspective, right? So any AWS or any cloud provider, they provide these four things, right? So they provide compute, they provide storage, they provide your networking, and then they provide your the databases. So on top of that, they will provide a lot of stuff, but this is the most important four things, right? So the compute, the storage, the networking, and databases. Any questions, anyone? Right. So now we'll have to figure out what to do with this example, right? Like, so I told you, like, if any cloud provider, that they will give you four things, right? One is compute, second one is the storage, third one is compute, storage, networking, and then databases, right? So I mean, in order for any of your application to work, right? Anything you develop to work, you need those four things, right? So without those four things, none of your application, you can't host it and it will not work. So I hope you are good, right? Up to now, any questions? Okay, so we'll go to AWS console right now. Just give me 1 second, right? I'll stop sharing and do it again. Okay, so if I go to AWS, there are a lot of ways I can get compute, right? So EC2 is like maybe you guys would have heard it, like that's the standard way how you get compute, right? So here I can bring up a virtual machine just like that, right? So if I want to launch an instance, I'll probably go and give a name for this, right? New VM virtual machine, right? But you have to understand, even though it's virtual, it's actually residing in a physical place, right? The whole idea is that we are not going to maintain that in the physical infrastructure. We're just going to use the virtual machine and make our lifestyle easy, right? So when you say virtual machine, it has to come up with the operating system, right? It either the Amazon Linux or Ubuntu, Windows, and it's something like that. And then it has to have kind of like a the capacity, right? Like once you deploy your things, like it has to have a certain the storage and other details. So what we call is the instant type. It's still the compute section, right? So we'll have to have a couple of CPUs, the memory. So it just has like your laptop, right? You have to have your the whatever the storage, the memory, and all those things. So that is your compute. So we will go with the T3 micro, which is free, right? So we are not going to kind of like go into very small things like registering AWS, getting account. So I hope like you guys can figure it out very quickly. So idea is that once you create your AWS account, you come here. These days AWS provide a lot of free credit, right? If you create even a new account, I think you get around $100 free. That which we can use as well. So we have to have something called key pair, right? That is like something which we can use to log in and get access that. Then this is about little bit of upfront security where I can enable SSH, I can enable traffic, and I can do all the other things, right? So enable traffic from other places. So this is storage, right? I'm adding like 8 GB of storage to my host or the VM, right? So I do that. Probably I'll launch it, right? That's the part. So I'll, if just to summarize, right? Like, so we were trying to create a new VM. What we have done, we select OS, right, operating system, and then we select our compute, right, like how many CPUs, memory, right, all the other things, right, and then there was a little bit of networking part we did, right, the access and those things, right, and then we added the storage, right, uh, so so those are the four things, right? There can be like multiple things, but at least from AWS perspective, uh, the elastic EC2 like compute, like these are the four things, like you'll have to be mindful, right? So my instance is up, so I can go to EC2s. I have two instances running, right? And I already created a demo for today. So this is a new instance we created now, right? Like probably I can connect it. Some issue, right? Like maybe we'll have to restart it again. Connect it again. Yeah. So what I'll do is, like in the interest of time, I'll create a new one. Uh, that happens, right? So that's so we'll create a new one. Maybe I'll go with Amazon Linux. So I'm selecting my OS, right? Uh, I'll add little more. No, I still don't need it. I'll go with the basic setup. Right? I select my key pair. So that is like if you want to access it, like then it manage your access. So let me add all those things. Everything should be good, right? So this is a EC2 console, right? Like it has all my VMs, right? Like I call it a virtual machine, and like at the world of AWS, it's about EC2, right? It's one sort of compute, right? So there are different ways you can get compute, but this is just one way of try to get a compute instance. So let me just try to connect it. Yeah, so it's connected. So you can see like it's an Amazon Linux instance, Amazon Linux 2023. So probably let me just do a right. So you can see the storage, right? So I can see like so there's a like all those storage. So all I guess is this is just bringing up a VM, right? So now what I have to do is like I have to figure out a way to uh, kind of like trade send this like so if I have a like if I actually have something like this, then like so maybe the host is my VM, right? So I'll replace this. This is no, I'm going to deploy this in AWS, right? And this is my VM, right? So this is EC2. So we are good, right? Everyone, like, are you following me? Any questions up to now? So I'll close this one, right? Uh, Before I forget, right? I tend to forget a lot. So let me just terminate it, right? Like I just don't want to, forget it and incur bill for this. This. So I already created one, right? So I already have a instance where I did some work. So let me connect to that. Any questions up to now? Anyone? Are we good? You have any doubt? So my VM is up, right? So my chat, I can see, if you are putting anything in chat, right? I can see as well. So just put something, right? At least, like, yeah, I'm understanding and we are following, we are okay up to now, something, right? So I feel like, you are into this. So the first part, right? We'll have to have some front end code, right? So what I have done is I used, I kind of like, I had one of my friend had a POC application. So I use that. So all the HTML code is here, right? So it's inside this demo folder. Okay? And uh, maybe you want to learn a little bit of Linux, right? So that's uh, we have not planned it. So you might want to know like at least basic commands, right? Basic commands of navigating in a Linux instance, right? The So that's again we are hoping that you will spend your own time to get to know, and that's important, right? Like you had to know the basic commands. Right? So this is my application, right? So I have so the index files and those things. So what this is giving me is so if I go to my instance again, right? If I go to my instance again, so when once like AWS I brought up an instance, it will give me two IPs, right? One is a public IP and one is a private IP, right? So idea is that using public IP, I should be able to access it, right? So this is not working. One thing is because I have not developed anything for HTTPS, right? So I'll kind of like remove HTTPS, make it HTTP traffic. So I'm hitting Apache, right? That's because the Angular I put it into inside Apache. So yes. Yeah. So these are my Apache instance. Right? So Apache is already working fine, right? So that's why when I hit that URL, right? So I don't have a domain name, right? I'm not going to use a domain name. It's applet. I don't want to spend on that. But IP address allows you to access it, right? Maybe I'll just send this to you. You guys can also access and see, right? So this is accessible from everywhere. Now if you remember, right, so all my code, so let's go back, right? All my code is inside something called demo, right? So this is more, so under HTML, like whatever you're going to put, it will automatically display to your customer, right, or end user. So I just have to make access it like demo, right? So if you try demo, you will have your car rental app, right? So it's a basic app, right? I We have the functionalities as well, right? So what I have done is so this is front end, right? Like front end part, I'll give you the access to this code, right? Maybe you can also build it, deploy it, and test it and see. But idea is that your front end is it's still within my VM, right? I'm not go I At this moment I have not done any fancy thing. I'm still inside AWS EC2. I kind of have a front end code, right? So this I'm going to mark it green because I have it working, right? Any questions, anyone? Up to now, are we good? Then is your our the microservices, right? So we want to use it in AWS Spring Boot. So I already have developed this, right? So if you see it so I have this the car service, and I have the reservation service. I have location service. So I did something different, right? Like I also want to ensure that I have this managed services like discovery and API gateway. So I'm not using a actual API gateway at the moment. So we have kind of a basic like I'm going. It's a proxy, right? It will just get the traffic. It will just pass it, right? So that's a small change we have done here, right? So we have the car service, we have the location service, we have the reservation, and here, sorry, we have my discovery. Ola Spring Boots app, right? The discovery, and this is my API gateway. So what I have done is like uh, yeah, so we have four things like, so if you have used microservices, like it's just a simple jar, right? Once you build it, it will come as a jar, right? So these are my jars, right? I have, if you see, I have my discovery service, right? I have my API gateway, I have location service, car service, and reservation service. So this is a POC, right? We are not going to do a full-fledged app. So whole idea of like, my location service is just connect to MySQL database, pull the location data, deploy, display. Just connect to my car table or something, get the car detail, display. Just connect to the reservation table. So it's just a reading, right? We do only select, right? So if I go to my car service, right, you can also navigate and see. So this data is coming from my location service, right? So location service is a microservice, just going and getting the data from my SQL and then populate this drop down, right? How to test this, whether this is kind of like, uh, it is coming from this microservice. I can go and kill it, right? Where's location, right? Location, right? So it's this one, right? 484817. 4817. So we kill that service. Let us go and check. And the data is not coming, right? Network. So if you go to console, you will see, right? Like, okay, so there's the error, right? Like, API location, right? So you can see API location is not working, right? So that means, my front end application is not able to retrieve the data from this API location, right? So that is that particular microservice, right? So if I go to reservation, yeah, the data is still coming. Let's do one thing, right? Let's go and to console, and we will do a clean bring. Yeah, so all the data is coming. So let us go and kill the location service. So this is the whole concept of microservice, right? If one service goes down, still I have my all, at least I have something which is up and running. So kill -9. If I go to, yes, my reservation service, right? It's 4892. It's working fine, right? So I just kill it. So hopefully, like, so this should also stop working. So it's stopped working, right? So the restoration is also not coming now. Right? So this is this. So here, if I go back, like, so we have a EC2, we deploy the front end Angular part, and we have these services, right? So these are the two important services. If these two goes down, this app will not work. And I deploy all of these microservices as well, right? And I also have this database, right? I'll So you have MySQLD, right? So my MySQL database is up and running. So if we any questions, right, up to now, anyone? So one last thing to check, right? So if you look at it, like, so if the what we discuss here, so it's a compute, right? So EC2 is the compute, right? So that probably you can understand. So storage is where, like, within the VM, right? uh, so I got the storage as well. That is where my front end code, everything is deployed. And what I have done is, like, I'm not using a separate database, but within the EC2 is itself I deploy like a MySQL, right? So that way that I can use MySQL and get this done, right? So I'm not using, like, the cloud provider databases, but just that, like, I configure something within my EC2, right? Compute. And then the networking part, right? Like, maybe you might not get this networking at the moment, right? I mean, if you are very new, like, you might remember when I'm bringing up the VM, I click three boxes, right? Some accesses. But let's do one thing, right? Let's go and see, right? So if you go to a EC2, right? So I'll go from the uh, start. So I'm at my EC2, so the instances, right? So I see this instance is running. So I'm here, right? So there's something called security, right? So if you go to security, there are a couple of things, right? There are inbound rules, outbound rule, and we have the security group as well. Let's go inside the security group, and then you can see there are rules, right? So if I try to edit these rules, basically what it says is, like, I'm enabling all traffic, I'm enabling HTTPS, HTTP, right? Uh, So let's do one thing, right? Like, let's delete HTTPS, HTTP, all traffic. Just keep HTTPS, and if I save this, this entire thing will not work, right? Because nobody's now. I just block it, right? So we have to enable the traffic here. So at the moment, like, we block it, and so this app will not work. So if I want to, so that is your networking part, right? I mean, you have to have, even as a developer, right? If you are testing it, you have to have some understanding of like this networking part, because that is also important for you to do this, right? So let me just add uh, all the rules, right? Let me add. Uh, I'll just add all traffic, right? Just to make it little easier, and then I save it. Go back. Yeah, now it's working, right? So I can go back and see. So this image is coming up, right? So that's the importance of network, right? So that probably give you a little bit of idea that network is also one area, right? So any questions now up to this, anyone? Okay. So now this is a very basic setup. Like, if you want, we can expand it, we can make it high available available. Let's assume that millions of customers are accessing this. Then we can able to make it more easy to use, like easy to develop. So there are various ways, but that this is the start, right? So any questions, anyone up to now? So I'll give you, just give me 1 second, right? I'm trying to open this GitHub repo. Sorry. The first exercise, like for you guys, right, is, so this is the link, right? You have the entire code, like the code to develop these microservices and everything. So what I want is for you to kind of go and explore this GitHub repo, and you also have the entire steps, right? So you can see you have the client, the how everything is connected, diagram is there, and like all the other the details, like to use it also mentioned here. So all the configuration details are here, right? So one only thing mistake we have it. Yeah. So only I'll correct it, right? Only mistake is, so if you are restarting your MySQL, make sure that it's not restart, right? It's restart. That's a small change, like you'll have to be mindful. So whenever every time you are restart, I'll correct this. Right. Apart from that, I think all the steps are very clear, neat. You should be able to test it and see, right? So the this POC, right, like which we discussed, the car rental application with the front end and couple of microservices with the database with the EC2, right, with the cloud. So that's the exact thing which you can kind of like deploy it and see. Then once you deploy, right, you can go and experiment on the code, right? Like you can see um, the the services, right? You have the, let's say, the location services. uh, you can go and see, like how it's been built, and all the relevant details as well. So I just want you to explore it, and probably that will allow you to kind of get little more experience on this. And in case, like you don't want to go through this POC, but you can find out a small microservice app. So what we want is you to bring up like a EC2 instance, and you can do that in a free tier, right, without spending money, and configure database, configure front end, one microservices, build something which you can access from online, right? So that's what we want you to develop. Any questions, anyone? So the last part of the day is, like what are we going to do about next 13 days, right? So I kind of already gave you a little bit of overview of AWS, right? AWS or any cloud provider, it's your compute. So here we learn about EC2, and but we are going to use some other things like serverless, and we have the Kubernetes, and we have containers, the Docker. So what we're going to do is we'll use couple of POCs like this, right? What we develop, and try to deploy it in couple of these different type of like the compute, so that you get that experience, right? So at the moment, like the go-to tool is serverless, right? So we want to do serverless based development, because then you don't really have to, even your virtual environment or cloud, you don't have to manage your the infrastructure, right? So it's kind of like pay as you go. So we are going to focus on that, right? So here, the so what we do is like, we will use a small POC application, try to go and discuss about these concepts, right? Like we will do IAM, the networking, we will look at the storage, we will look at the database, and we will build a CI/CD pipeline for a POC application, uh, which is again part of a small POC, which is focused on a particular like working solution. And then we look at the serverless, the ECS, EKS, and those things. So all those like 11 modules will be small POC applications where you can go and test it, right? So we might not be able to kind of like go through hands on each code, but what we'll do is like, we'll give you the code, we'll kind of like let you play around the code, or maybe you can develop something with that, right? So whole idea is that with that you will be able to develop something, right? Any questions, right? Are we good, guys? Any questions? So I have one last thing, right? With this, like, we'll like close this session, today's session. Just try to find the. Okay, so let me share my screen right quickly, right? So I hope you are able to see my screen. So this is a post I came in LinkedIn, right? Very recently, right? So if you, so let me just, so this is a very nice post, right? Like it's written by someone called Jan, right? So what he's saying is AWS, let me just make it little, increase the font, right? So what it says is like, AWS has 200 plus services, but you can get 90% of real work done by mastering these 10, right? So what he's saying is learn about storage, learn about maybe a one database, right? Maybe DynamoDB. Learn about Lambda. This is serverless. So that almost, at least like, almost all the customers I know, they are moving into serverless, right? Because you don't really have to maintain EC2s. You don't want to maintain Kubernetes. You don't want to use ECS, EKS, all those stuff. So it's like pay as you go, right? I have one customer. I just pay a small amount. I have million customer. It will convert to million. So until I get the million customers, I don't have to incur cost, right? So that's serverless, right? Cognito is your authentication authorization, right? Next week I'll go through a one demo application where you will see how you can use, right? Like almost all the application, right? Amazon.com, like to anything, you need to log in, right? Like you want to use your Gmail account, create account, get your the PIN, login in. So authentication, authorization is the must, right? Whatever you do, so you need to know, right? This cognito, the authorization part. And then second one is API gateways, right? So if you remember, like even this POC application, I had location service, car service, reservation service. I created my own API gateway or proxy, because whenever the request happening, we want to kind of like pass it, right? So, but in a real world, you don't really want to have your own API proxy, but we can use the actual API gateway, right? So we will learn about API gateway, and then again, like there are need for us to route traffic, those things. So we will use something called event bridge. So don't worry, right? Like if you don't know these terms, all good, that's fine. But it just I'm trying to focus you and tell what are the key things, right? You should learn. And then if you have like lot of places, we are using something called queue, right? Like the message comes in, we put it into a queue, and then a consumer read it, right? So that's a better way, like when you are handling millions of messages. So something like queue. Notification, we are using something called SNS. It can be your email, SMS, like lot of things. IAM is like again our security roles and permission. And we yeah, so these are kind of like the 10 things, right? Even I think like if you know these 10 things, then you are good, right? You are expert, and you don't need to learn all those stuff, but at least if you learn this 10 things, right? So our focus is uh, we are not going to go deep in any of these things, but we will bring some of these things and see, right, like, and ensure that, like, all 10 weeks or 12 weeks, we will all every session we will use some of these things, so that it will help you to like, develop something, deploy, and make it accessible to your end users, right? So AWS or the cloud is allowing you to simplify it, get a good experience, so that you can come up with something quickly and deploy it and get your users to access, right? And that's what we're going to do during next several weeks. So I'm officially done. Any questions, anyone? So if no questions, we'll wind up, right? And I think we have a WhatsApp group. I mean, if you have any questions, suggestions, and if you think like we should go fast, or we should go slow, no, or we should just finish this in 1 hour, and just do any feedback, right? Like, you can give it. So whole idea is that we want to ensure that you get the best benefit. So with that, thanks everyone. Thanks for taking time. So we'll meet next week with another session.
Thank you, Mr. Indiga. So, we are deeply grateful for Mr. Indigo Musuria for sharing his AWS and DevOps expertise with us today. So, your practical insights and clear explanations have given us exactly the strong foundation we hope for. So, and also to all our participants, your questions and that enthusiasm made this first session truly special. And also, this interactive special is what we expect throughout the next set of sessions. And we got an exciting roadmap ahead with sessions that will build on today's foundation. And let's until we meet again at the next session. Thank you all for making this launch so successful, and have a wonderful evening, wonderful weekend, and good night. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.